Hello everyone, I'm Wendell Jones and welcome to this edition of our program, Jones and Company. On this program, we examine national issues, sometimes international issues, and we are always pleased to have guests on our program who are outside the Bahamas, who live in foreign lands. And today we are pleased to have the new Chancellor of the University of the West Indies with us. I spoke with an official of UWI and said that we have interviewed every chancellor for the last 20 years on our program, and so it is our delight to have Mr. Robert Bermudez, the new Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, as our guest on the program today. Mr. Bermudez, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good. Godfrey Enius, nice to have you here as usual, sir.
Thank you.
And Mr. Bermudez, what brings you to the Bahamas at this time?
Well, this is actually my second visit to the Bahamas at the invitation of the Alumni Association. The first time was to celebrate the university's 70th anniversary, which was in November. And this time is to have a conversation with the alumni in the Bahamas, of which there are many. And there's a strong alumni association here, as you may be aware of, that is very active, and we want to make it more so.
You want to make it more so. And you have an engagement at the University of the Bahamas as well?
No, I don't have an engagement.
I thought you were one of those people who was talking about the University of the West Indies and how you are working in this global environment.
Well, we certainly work in a global environment, and we see our role and the University of the Bahamas' role as being complementary. But at this visit, I won't be visiting the University of the Bahamas. Actually, I got in here yesterday, and I just have this one event this evening.
Yes.
But I look forward to meeting with the University of the Bahamas.
In your role as Chancellor of UWI, you are really a businessman, aren't you?
I am a businessman, and it's quite unusual. In fact, I'm the first person who is not an academic, other than an English princess. I'm the first person who is not an academic who has become Chancellor of the university, and I think this has been seen as the university reaching outside of the walls of the university for someone with a different life experience. In order to lead it.
And you said to us off air that your family was involved in the food business or bakeries?
Well, we're involved in the cookie and cracker business.
Okay.
And have been for a very long time. And that is where I was brought up in that industry. I've had experience in lots of other things over the years, but my heart is still in the cookie and cracker industry.
And it has been, you have expanded it throughout the region, I believe.
Yes, we have a regional business. Regrettably, one of the markets which we are not present in is the Bahamas.
We have to fix that.
We're going to have to fix that, yes, for sure.
Yes.
But our products are present in most of the islands of the Caribbean, with the exception of the Bahamas. Actually, we were present here many years ago, and I don't know what has happened over the years.
Okay. Good.
Chancellor, I come from an era where UWI was not only the sole, but the premier tertiary institution in the English Caribbean. Since independence in the 60s, there's been a proliferation of national universities, like the University of the Bahamas, like the University of Trinidad and Guyana and elsewhere. How is UWI coexisting with these national universities?
I think the UWI coexists perfectly well with these national universities. One of the things that has happened since independence is that tertiary education is available to a lot more people than it ever was before. And if you were to add up the enrollment of all of the universities and tertiary level institutions, the UWI has almost 50,000 students enrolled at the moment. And you were to add the others, it is in fact a huge number of people who are receiving tertiary education. And that is a good thing. This is a positive thing. It is my view that, the UWI continues to be the premier institution, but we see ourselves, as I said earlier, in a collaborative mode with the national colleges. And I think we need to work together to ensure that more people have the opportunity of getting the skills training that they need.
One of the criticisms, sir, with UWI was that UWI was extremely selective. And because of that, the selection process, many Caribbean people didn't get the opportunity to get a tertiary education. How do you respond to that?
Well, I don't know what you mean by selective. One of the things that the UWI was small. And if you look at the enrollment over the years, the university hovered around 3,000 to 10,000 enrollment for a very long period of time. And in this century, there's been a significant expansion in the enrollment of the university. I can't speak particularly why it didn't grow faster in the years from 48 to, say, 2000. There may have been many factors for that I'm not aware of. That the university is selective, I think certainly the university has taken the best young people and tried to give them the best education possible. But certainly in a negative sense, I don't think the university has been selective.
Let's speak about the reputation of the University of the West Indies globally. Mm-hmm. We have a number of professionals in the Bahamas, a cadre of doctors and lawyers and engineers, and I'm sure that the alumni here is very grateful to UWI. But in terms of the impact of the university globally, how do you respond to that?
Well, the world is a very big place. Let's start with our constituency, which is the West Indies.
Yes.
If you look today, there are, of the prime ministers in CARICOM, there are 2 who are not graduates of the University of the West Indies. If you were to then go and look at the bench in the judiciary, you would find it difficult to find members of the judiciary who are not graduates of the University of the West Indies. If you go to the hospital here, by far the majority of the clinicians here would be graduates of the University of the West Indies. And so it goes on. So the effect of that the University of West Indies has had and the impact it's had since 1948, when it started with 30-odd undergraduate medics, has been enormous. It has touched every walk of life in what we call the West Indies. So that said, the university has been an export-oriented university, and that a lot of people have got degrees at the University of the West Indies and have gone abroad and made their lives there. And the education that they got at the University of the West Indies has served them in good stead. Mm-hmm. And I think our graduates speak for our success.
Yes.
Mr. Bermudez, one of the high points of UWI was that UWI was a melting pot of all the people from the region.
Yeah.
That's not going to last much longer with the rise of national universities. Well, because many people who would have had tertiary education would not have gone to UWI.
Well, that is something that we have lost, in the sense that when the university was first envisaged, it was envisaged having a Faculty of Medical Sciences at Mona, that the Faculty of Agriculture and Engineering would be in Trinidad, the Faculty of Law in Barbados. So at that period in time, if you were a lawyer, you were trained in Barbados. Every legal person in the Caribbean that was a graduate of UWI they'd all met each other at their time at Cave Hill. The same was true of all the medics in the Caribbean had been to Mona campus. what happened, the same question you asked about the university being selective, what happened was when it was required that you needed to train more doctors and more lawyers and more engineers, we now have a faculty of medical sciences in the 3 landed campuses. We also have a School of Clinical Medicine in the Bahamas. So we did lose that aspect, that it was an integrating force during that period. However, there still are a lot of West Indians who go to campuses that are not their home campuses, and that is a positive thing. But if you're going to have access, I don't think anybody would argue that it is better we have access than we have the ability to have one faculty and then not be able to give everybody who needs to study law or medicine the opportunity. So like everything else, that's a balancing act. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's the demise, because we still have a lot in common.
Let's talk about leadership in the Caribbean, Mr. Bermudez. You mentioned that quite a number of prime ministers attended the university and jurists among them. There is a point of view that universities ought to be assisting governments in policy positions, and in the case of the University of the West Indies, perhaps assisting CARICOM in certain regional positions, establishing policy positions. Does the University of the Bahamas, I beg your pardon, of the West Indies, are you about that?
Well, of course we're about that. The university does do a lot of consultancy work. It does a lot of research work. It advises the governments of the Caribbean on various issues. But, you know, the university can develop policy thought. But it's actually the governments who have to decide which of these policies suits them, suits their vision for the countries that they are responsible for. Mm. So it is at times, and I shouldn't say at times, it is a situation where you have different points of view in the university. The university has people who would argue one point of view and another group who would argue another point of view. And out of that, the political directorate would have to decide what were the pros and cons of these various arguments and which would suit them best. I think in the various campuses this goes on, and it does have influence on government policy. Mm.
You know, there are many issues that we face in the Caribbean. One has to do with the non-communicable diseases.
That's a huge issue.
Yes. Another has to do with the level of crime and violence in the Caribbean. And one would think that that governments would lean on the University of the Bahamas, I keep saying Bahamas, on the University of the West Indies for guidance.
The University of West Indies is also the University of the Bahamas, so it's okay. We're the University of all the territories.
I hear you.
Yeah.
But to lean on UWI for guidance and for direction in how to combat some of these issues that we have.
Well, the university does do work with the government. I mean, maybe some of it is not visible, but professors and academics at the university do work with individual governments and assist them in any way they can, to different degrees.
Yeah, but has the university really reported on what it is doing, for instance, to reduce the incidence of non-communicable diseases in the region?
Well, the university has a Department of Non-Communicable Diseases at Cave Hill that does a lot of research work and also is doing work in public health education. I mean, the reality is that non-communicable diseases requires a great deal of public education. And as I was talking to Dr. Robin Roberts today, he says, you know, when you think how much money is spent advertising Coca-Cola, no disrespect to Coca-Cola, as against how much we are spending advertising the fact that there are certain things such as sugar, high sugar products that are dangerous for your health, you know, it's just no comparison. So really and truly, I think it's an effort that the university has to do more of, but we certainly have to really focus on public education, and more resources have to be put into that area.
You mentioned these NCDs, but more and more, you live in Trinidad, don't you?
Yeah.
The incidents of crime and violence are also is really disturbing
Of course,
to Caribbean people.
I think it disturbs all of us, and it is only growing worse. And it does present a threat, serious threat, to all of us, to our economies. I mean, particularly the islands with tourist economies. This rise in violent crime is a real threat, and the university does work on it. I have a particular view. I think that that the idea that we can fight crime at the front, the police force, using force, that is one component, but that is after the horse has already bolted. This is why crime are being committed. I think a lot of it is social issues that need to be dealt with at primary school and secondary school, and a lot of efforts within the community. I think a lot of the solutions to crime lie in community activism, as against thinking that the police forces or whatever can deal with crime. They can deal with the effects of crime, but real crime prevention is to create an environment where people do not believe that a life of crime is a good option, because they have other options.
Yes, Godfrey?
Wendell mentioned two areas of concern: non-communicable diseases and crime. There's a third, in my opinion: the brain drain. During the Obama administration, President Obama gave, I think, the highest merit award to a UWI graduate, a lady, all right, who graduated from UWI, left Jamaica, went to the United States, and excelled. That is a big problem throughout the region, this brain drain, because Caribbean economies are not, first of all, expanding, and they're not developing industries that can retain some of these people who are graduating. How is the university address this issue?
Well, I mean, I told you the university is an export business, because we are educating young West Indians who then export themselves to prosperity in the first world. I don't know that the university can do a lot about it. What we need is greater opportunity in the Caribbean islands, so as to try to attract more of our people to stay here and more people to come back.
Well, I think the university can be very involved, like Wendell said, you know, for example, marijuana, all right? That's $1 billion industry in the United States.
Sure.
All right? Why isn't UWI doing more work in pharmaceuticals and or research work in those areas that we can benefit from the fact that you cannot grow marijuana competitively anywhere better than you can grow it in the Caribbean. So we're losing that opportunity, in my opinion. And also the fact is that the Caribbean citizens have a myopic view on marijuana. They see it as a drug, you know, for recreation, and not as something for medicinal purposes.
Medicinal. Well, I do know that work is being done on the Mona campus, and obviously this is something that presents an opportunity, because, as you say, marijuana grows in these islands, but it has become a $1 billion business, and it will be very competitive. So it's going to be something that we are going to have to seek, both in these islands and at the university, to do as much work as possible on. But as you know, in most of the territories, it's still an illegal, drug.
Yeah.
You were chosen to be the Chancellor of the University of the West Indies because I believe one of the reasons, because you're a businessman, right?
Well, I think I am.
Yes. You think you are a businessman?
Yes.
You're not sure yet? But Mr. Bermudez, University of the West Indies doesn't have a money problem, does it?
Of course, the University of the West Indies has a money problem.
You have a money problem?
Yes, it does.
So what are you doing about that money problem?
Well, I wish I could just wave a wand and let it go. The reality is that as enrollment has increased, and it has increased significantly, the cost of running the university has increased with it. And the reality is that the running costs of the university are paid for by the contributing countries. And with few exceptions, the contributing countries all have difficult economic times. Many of them are going through very difficult economic times. So the amount of funding available for the university is not all that the university would like it to be. So yes, we do have a funding problem.
Yeah, but given...
And we have had it for a long time.
Yeah. Given the success of the university over the 70 years, what you have contributed not only to the region but to the world, it seems to me that you have people who have attended UWI who are doing well in developed countries who can be of assistance to you.
That is true. That is true. And we have people who are of assistance to us. But there's never enough money for tertiary education. And remember that the University of West Indies is effectively a state university. So the funding is given by the states. By and large, students do not pay what I should say, without almost all of the students get subsidized tuition at the University of the West Indies. In some cases, very subsidized. In the case of Barbados, the tuition is free. In the case of Trinidad, it is almost free. In Jamaica, the students have to pay. So this makes it very expensive. But on the other hand, it allows people who are born in disadvantaged circumstances to have an equal chance at tertiary education. So I think that's the benefit of it.
Have the governments of the region been pulling their weight with respect to funding the university?
I have no criticism of the governments of the region. I think they're all contributing to the funding of the university. Not all of them are able to contribute as much as they would like to, or as much as maybe we would like them to, but the reality is that the university would not be what it is without a consistent funding level from the contributing countries, which we do get.
Okay, good. We have to take a break here, and Godfrey Ines has a good question for you. We take this break here on our program, Jones and Company, speaking with the Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, Mr. Robert Bermudez. We'll come right back.